We're now going to take a closer look at the various parts of the Revit interface. When you first open Revit, a Recent Files window will appear with three main sections, one for projects, one for families, and another here for resources. In the resources area, you can access the help file and some basic skills videos as well. In the projects area, this is where you're going to be accessing most of your files. Projects are the main file type and format for working in Revit. The Projects section shows the four most recently accessed project files with a little thumbnail image for each. There are also open and new links here on the side, as well as links to the main project template files for different disciplines. We have an architectural template, a construction template, structural, and mechanical. And the template files that you use will contain different settings, such as different starting views, measurement settings, project phasing might be set up, as well as preloaded content such as walls and doors and windows. In this course, you should start your projects with the architectural template. This is actually going to use a template called default.rte from the US Imperial Templates folder. If you pick New, another dialog box appears, and it's allowing you to select a project template file. We can create a new project, or we can actually create a custom template, and we'll be doing that later in the course. From my drop-down list, we see the same four templates that are available here in this area. So if you're using a standard architectural, you don't really need to pick New, just pick the template directly. If I choose Browse, it's going to open up to the default content folder, and for this installation it's set to US Imperial. When you first install Revit, the content that's going to be installed will be based on the country where you're residing. If you are in the US and you install Revit, this is going to be the default folder. If you're in Canada, then it's going to install a Canadian set of folders, and the default templates are going to be metric files, because technically the system of measurement in Canada is metric. You can choose a default metric file here, but we're going to be doing quite a bit of work in feet and inches, so you're going to access the default.rte from US Imperial. And again, this template file is the same as the architectural template here in this list. Now, just to take a look at a couple of others, if I choose the construction default instead, and we can do it here, or you could just choose construction here on the project listing for the templates, and I pick open, and then OK, that's going to start a new file. It's just called Project 1 at the moment, and the file is going to have a few levels already set up. There's a level 1, a level 2, there's a top of footing level, a top of basement slab, a top of foundation, a roof level, and a site level. So all of these levels are predefined in the project. Under existing views, there are a wide range of views for existing construction and the demolished construction, and these are going to be linked to phases as well. And we'll be covering phases in the Level 3 course. Now I'm just going to close this by going to my application menu here, and I'll choose Close. And we'll try another one. If I pick New again, and I choose Browse, and we choose the residential default template, and I choose Open, and pick OK. Again, it starts another new project. We're actually up to project 12. I've started a few now. And this has a number of floor plans that we can see visible here, or different levels. There's a bottom of footing, basement. There's a view for an electrical layout. There's a view on the first floor for a framing layout, and another view for an electrical layout. So we have all of these different views that are predefined. If I go to my elevation view by double-clicking on the south elevation, you can see the different levels that are defined and that have plan views associated with them shown here. Again, I'll just go back and close this by going to the menu and picking Close. And if you have more than one view open, this method closes the entire project. If I just pick the X up here it's going to close one view and then take me back to the last view that was active. And then I can close again. And eventually, by closing one view at a time, you can close out the project as well. But if you want to get rid of everything in one step, use this method. So we're going to go back to the architectural template, and I'll just pick architecture template here and start a new file. When you first start a project in Revit, you're going to see an interface with a large drawing area and several areas for accessing commands, setting options and parameters, and controlling the view of your drawing or model. It's possible to modify the appearance of the interface by opening or closing interface elements via the User Interface pull-down on the Windows panel of the View tab. So if I go to my View tab here on the ribbon, and we look in this Windows User Interface area, and I pick a little drop down, we can enable or disable different parts of the interface here. So you can close your Properties palette, or you can close your Project Browser, which are these two elements here on the side. If I clear this Project Browser, or if I clear Properties, it's going to close those sections. If I go back to my Modify menu, I can choose Properties here to open that. And if I want to bring my Project Browser back, I'm going to go to the View section and User Interface and enable my Project Browser. And the best way to have this set up is the default method, where the properties are going to be displayed above the Project Browser here on the left side of the screen. You can drag these Project Browser and Properties windows around as well. If you'd like, you can change the orientation, and I can pull this off and float it on my screen. And if you have a large monitor or two monitors, you can actually move this off to the side as well and put it on a different monitor. When you want to pull this back in, if you do this, sometimes it can be tricky to get it docked again. And when it's locked into the side of the screen, that's called a docked position. And to dock this, I'm going to pick the title bar and then drag. That's how I can move it. I can float my mouse here on the side until I see a double arrow appear, and that allows me to change the size of this element. And if I want to dock it, I'm going to pull this over around the edge, and you'll see that gray rectangular frame change size and shape. Now at that position, it's going to go into a vertical orientation beside the Properties palette. And I don't want that. I want it down below. So I'll pick again, drag my mouse down. There. And now I see the gray rectangle outline appear on top of the Properties palette, and I let go, and that's going to dock them again. So it can be a little tricky if you pull them off. If you do it by accident and you want to get it back, just float your mouse around and drag this out until you see that rectangle appear in the correct location. This is the main interface element, and this is where you're going to access most of your commands. This is called the ribbon here at the top, and you can change the appearance of this ribbon by adding or removing tabs. The Structure tab and the Systems tab can actually be turned off, and depending on how you installed AutoCAD, depending on how you installed the software, you might not see a Structure or Systems or maybe even a Massing and Site tab on your ribbon. If I go to my application menu here and I choose the Options section, the Options allows me to, again, modify the many settings, including the user interface, and this is where I could enable or disable the display of the structural information. If I know I'm not going to be working with that Structure tab, I can turn it off here. If I know I'm not going to be using the Systems tab, I can turn the Systems tab for mechanical or electrical or piping, and I can turn these off. The energy analysis and tools, if I'm not doing energy analysis until later, I can turn that off. And when I pick OK, it's going to remove some of those elements. When you install Revit as a pure Revit architecture, you might actually have this appearance without the structure and system tabs relevant or visible on your screen. Revit has excellent support for keyboard shortcuts, and these are widely used to speed access to commonly used commands. Most of the tooltips in Revit are 2-key shortcuts, and they have defined values so that if I type WA, it's going to start a wall command. And I can add a couple of walls here. If I wanted to add a door in one of these walls, I can zoom in by turning my mouse wheel, type DR, and I can add a door just like that. If I want to see what the keyboard shortcuts are, there's actually a keyboard shortcut for opening the keyboard shortcuts, and it's called KS. And if I type KS, I can open this dialog and take a look through and see what the various shortcuts are. So a component is accessed with the shortcut CM. We can pull these together. If I want to add text, I'll type TX. If I want to, let's see, add a structural floor, that would be the SB shortcut. If I want to start the render process from a 3D view, I can type RR to start the rendering, or RO to access a rotate tool. I'll just cancel here. At the top of the screen, this section here along the top is called the title bar, and it's going to display the name of the current project. As soon as I go into my Save As command here and give this a name, if I choose Save As Project, and we go into our Files drive and go to Revit 1, and I give this a name, call this Demo 1, and save, that name is going to appear at the top. Beside the title bar on the right hand side, we have a help system, and if I want to know a little bit more about using a command called level to create levels, I can just type level in this field and hit enter, and it's going to open up a browser. I'll just resize this and pull this up into the screen so that you can see it. And so that method allows us to bring up the help menu or the help system for anything that I type. If I want to know more about walls, I can type wall and hit enter, and it will open up a browser with the wall section current, and I can find out about walls and how to place walls and work with walls in this help system. There's a little arrow here, and if I reduce this search field, it's also going to show me the current version. So I'm recording this set of demonstrations in Autodesk Revit 2016, and that version will only show if the help field is hidden. If we expand that, you won't see the version. The application menu is this one with the big letter R at the left side of the screen, and if I pick here, we're going to see a list of recently accessed files. So if I wanted to get back to my Manor House KB file, I can select this here and open that file. The drop-down menu in here allows me to access or create new project files as well. I can create a new project, and it will allow me to select a template. So I'll pick my architecture template and start a new file. So all of your open and save tools are here. We can access publishing and printing controls, and we can also access that options dialog where we can go through and set up save reminder intervals. We can enable or disable the tabs that we might not need to see, or if we want to bring them all up, we can add those here. If I go back into options again, there's a section for file locations, and this is where you can see your project template files and change the order of them. So if you want the mechanical template to be on top, I can move that to the top of the list. If I know that I'm not going to be doing anything with the structural template, I can highlight this and then remove it from my list. and then pick OK. And if I go back to my New Files window or select a new project, that template has now been removed, so we don't have a structural template listed. And if I go back to Options again and go into my file locations, we can add that structural template back by adding a value, and then I could browse to my US Imperial Templates section. So those are some of the things that you can do here. We have some rendering controls, some spelling. You can choose whether you're using American English or British English. We have tools that access our options for steering wheels and view cubes, and also macros. The quick access toolbar is this little section here along the top on the left side of the title bar. And the quick access toolbar provides access to many of the most commonly used commands, such as undo and redo, the file utilities, such as your save command. You can access a dimension tool here, or a measure tool if you want to add some text, or tag an element, or switch to a 3D view. All of those elements and values are available here. If I close this project and we take a look over here, there's another one that allows me to switch windows. And if you have more than one project open, we can switch to another project through this little pull down. So this switch windows lets you access different projects, and this takes us back to our default project that we started. The quick access toolbar can easily be modified by selecting elements to include on the toolbar from a drop-down list, and that's just over here on the right. So if I pick this little arrow and it drops down, we can choose to add a new file or a new project icon, and now that appears. And we can clear that. If we want to get rid of this synchronize with central option, I can remove that, and that's a work sharing option. If I don't want the measure tool, I can get rid of the measure. So anything that we enable or disable here is going to be reflected on the quick access toolbar. If you'd like to change the position, you can push the ribbon, the quick access toolbar, down so that it is a little bit closer to your screen, and move it down in this location below the ribbon. The default is to show it above the ribbon on the title bar, and that's going to give you a little bit more room to work. The ribbon control panels are the main interface element, and these are used for accessing tools in current versions of Revit. The ribbon will contain 9 to 12 default tabs depending on the how you installed it and whether you've turned off any of those other options, such as the structural or systems tabs. And we can switch between these tabs just by picking them. If I want to go to my View tab, I highlight this, and for each tab you have a set of control panels. The ribbon is context sensitive as well, and it's going to change and show new elements when you start new commands. If I select a wall tool, then a new tab appears at the top called Modify Place Wall. We also have an options bar showing below that section, and this allows me to define my walls by picking points, or I could create a rectangle, and I can do a rectangular set of walls, or I can add segments of walls like this. If I add a door and I choose the door tool, now we have a context sensitive place door tab appear, and it allows me to add a door, or I have an option to load a family or model a door in place as well if I want to do something really custom. You can choose to tag the door as it's added, and if I just use that option and add a door, it's automatically going to add a door tag. If that's cleared and I add a door, then we get a door without the tag, and the tag is a separate element that you can move or delete from the door just by selecting it. When we're accessing something like a wall command from the build panel, and most of the work that you'll be doing is going to come from the Architecture tab, and most of the elements that you'll be creating, your basic elements, are going to come from the Build panel. So here we find our wall. You can do architectural walls or structural walls. We have a door element, windows, columns, roof, and a floor. All of those basic building elements are available here. When you select an element, such as a wall tool, the next thing that you're going to do is take a look in the Type pull-down. And this little selector here at the top of the Properties palette is called a Type Selector. And the Type Selector lets you choose a type of wall that is already loaded in the project. The number or the type of walls are going to be based on the template that you've used to start your project. If I reach in here and I want to create an exterior brick wall on metal stud, or a foundation wall that's all concrete, or just a standard 4-inch brick wall, I can select that wall type, and then I can start sketching my wall. We can specify that we want to create a chain of walls. And if I zoom in here, you can see that this wall is showing a little bit different. It's showing some hatching, indicating that it's masonry. If I go to my wall tool and I reach in here and I choose an exterior brick and concrete masonry unit on metal stud, and then I start picking elements, we'll use a chain option again. And we'll just add a few sections of wall here. This wall is showing a little bit coarser detail, and I can adjust that by changing the detail level to medium, and it will show all of the different components in that wall. If I change my visual style here from hidden to shaded, it's going to allow me to see those elements a little bit more easily. So we have a brick and airspace, some sheathing, and then a metal stud on the inside, it looks like. So the type selector is used to choose the type of door or window, whatever you're adding. If I pick a window here, I can select my size in the type selector. So I'll choose a 24 by 48 inch window, and I'll just pick a point here to add that window in the wall. Below the type selector, we have our properties palette, and as you're adding elements, you can specify values on the options bar and also on the properties palette. The options bar changes dynamically depending on the type of element which is selected or is being created, and it allows you to also change the behavior of the object creation and the parameters for the object. Let's just zoom back here and I'll select these objects and delete a few. And we'll go to our wall tool, and we're going to set this up so that the height of the wall is going to reach up to level 2. And now the height value gets cleared on the options bar. If this is an unconnected height, then I could say that I want the wall to be exactly 12 feet. And just pick over here. We can draw this so that the points that I pick are going to be at the center of the wall, or if I'd like to draw it from with the exterior dimensions, I can choose Finish Face Exterior. And now as I pick points and drag my mouse along here, so zoom in a little bit, we come over 12 feet, and then I'll come down another 10 feet, and then we'll go over 10 feet, come down 6 feet, and then I'll just right click and pick Cancel to finish that. So you can start a command, and then you choose the type that you want, you set up any options that you want, and you can also access the options for creation depending on the type of object that you're adding in the properties palette itself. So the height, or the top constraint for our wall, it shows here as 12 feet and unconnected. It's also shown here in the properties palette. So if I want to draw this so that it goes up to level 2, that's going to disable the height value. If I want this to be drawn with the location line at the center line of the wall instead of the outside, Now as I drag my mouse around and add these sections of wall, you can see that the dimensions are going to the center of the wall. If I add a door or window, we can specify, let's do a window instead. I'll go back to architecture and I'll choose window, and we're going to specify that we'd like to create a 36 by 48 inch window. We have an option here to tag on placement. So you have this tag option, and then you can say that you want to add a leader to your tag. You can specify the other properties for the window here in the properties palette. So if I want this window to come in at a height of 2 feet to the sill, I change that value, and then I pick a point to add that window, and the command repeats, and I can add as many windows as I'd like, and then just right click and enter. And so this is the set of tags that we asked to create as we've added the windows. If we add a window again, go back to architecture and then choose window, and we clear that tag on placement option, or let's turn it on but get rid of the leader. And then as I add my windows, the tags for the windows will just appear beside it. So you have a ribbon for accessing the tools. You have a type selector to choose the type of wall or window or door. You have an options bar which has more settings to control how it's going to work. And then you have a properties palette where you can get into the nitty-gritty values such as the sill height or the head height for the window. And depending on the type of object that you're creating, these values of course are going to vary. When you're working with your Revit project and you're adding different elements, let's just pull back, and I'm going to do a selection and remove some of these again. If I start my wall command and I take a look down at the bottom here, it says click to enter wall start point. Alright, sounds good. Let's just change this to finish face exterior, and we'll set this to an unconnected height, and we'll create a wall that is 12 feet high. And then as I drag my mouse, take a look down at the bottom. I'll zoom in a little bit closer so you can see it. So I'm drawing this from the exterior face, and at the status bar, which is this area here, it's asking me to enter a wall endpoint and space flips orientation. So if I press my space bar, it's going to flip that wall to the other side of the location line. So I can draw the wall here and here and here, and I'll do another section that's horizontal, and then cancel. The status bar gives you information about what you're selecting. If I float my mouse here, at the status bar at the bottom it says wall, basic wall, exterior brick and CMU. If I pick that wall, it's going to give me a prompt to click to select or tab for alternate, press Control to add, and Shift to unselect. So if I want to add this wall here, I can press Control and then pick this one. Press Control here. If I want to remove this, I'll press Shift and pick it. And I'm getting that information from the status bar. If I want to just clear all of the selections, I can just press my Escape key. And we'll pick here and hit delete to remove that wall. So the status bar gives you information about whatever is below your cursor, or whatever Revit is prompting you for next. If we start a door command, then the status bar says click on wall to place door, space bar to flip the instance left or right. So you can get information from that status bar. It's similar to the command prompt in AutoCAD. So if I pull my mouse down here and it starts to add this door, we have an option to flip it by pressing my space bar. If I pull the door in here and I want to change the hinge direction, I can just tap my space bar to do that, and then pick a point when I'm happy with the orientation. Other areas where you can use for accessing options and commands are the shortcut menus. And I just did one there without even thinking of it. But if I right click my mouse, nothing selected, no command active, and I right click, we have a number of options available in the shortcut menus. We can repeat the last command. We can find a set of recent commands, so we could start another architectural wall here. If I right click my mouse, we can choose to repeat a door command now and add a door. If I right click and cancel, it's going to remove that or cancel that operation. We have options to zoom in and out or zoom to fit. And I can turn my mouse wheel to zoom in as well. And I'll just cancel. If I select a door and I right click my mouse, we have options related to the door. So we can flip the hand, or we can flip the facing. We also have options to hide this in view or create similar. And that's a neat one. If I have different types of doors, different types of windows, and then I want to create another one that's the same type as this, then I can select that first window, right click and choose create similar, and then I'm going to create another window with all of the same settings and the same type. And I can add those in another wall. And I'll just press escape to clear. The cursor menu provides access to zoom and pan commands, but the quickest and easiest way to zoom or pan, turn your wheel to zoom in and out, press your middle button to pan, press it and hold and drag and it will pan the view, zoom in, pan it over, zoom in, and then we can go back out. Down here we have a view control bar, and this view control bar lets me change the level of detail. So I can make this a coarse detail and it hides some of those elements. I can change the style of the view to a black and white or hidden line or a shaded view. And we can change the scale of the view, and the scale is going to relate to the size of the annotation elements. So if I change this from 1/8 of an inch to a foot to 1/4 inch to a foot, these tags or annotations will change size. If I add a dimension here, all of the annotation elements will be linked to the scale. If I change this to 1/2 inch equals a foot, or if I change it to 1/8 of an inch equals a foot, all of the annotations will redraw. We'll take a closer look at all of these view control bars or view control tools in another portion of the course. The project browser is a very important section, and that'll be a final section for this portion of the demonstration. The project browser shows a logical hierarchy of all of the views, legends, schedules, sheets, families, groups, and linked Revit models for the current project. Let's just pull this up a little bit, and I'll even float this out into the screen so that we can see a wider view. So we have all of the views in the current project, as well as sheets, all of the families, which are the different types of objects such as doors that are loaded in the project. We have a door single flush. Most of the time you're going to be using this project browser to switch between views. So if I want to go to the second level, I double click here. If I want to see an elevation, then I'll just expand that category and I'll double click on south, and it will take me to the south elevation view of our current project. If I want to pull this back down in, I'm just going to float my mouse down here until I see that rectangle appear and then let go to dock it. So your different views of your model are going to be visible here. A legend or a schedule is also considered a view. We can access the project browser to make new sheets. And then we can add views to those sheets by dragging and dropping them onto the sheet. And we can access the families that we have loaded. So if we'd like to find our windows here and see what type of windows we have fixed windows with these sizes. We can use the project browser to rename views. If I want to change this floor plan view from level 1 to first floor plan, then I'm going to pick it, right click and choose rename, and then we can say that this is the first floor plan, or just first floor, and pick OK. And it's asking me if I'd like to rename the corresponding level and views, and we'll say yes. And because the project is linked with all of the views tied together, if I change the level here, first floor, and then I look in my elevation views, that name is also going to change here on my elevation lines. Each time you open a view, it's going to remain open when you switch to another view. And if I take a look here in my switch windows list, you can see that we have this many views open in different projects. And now that we have a few views open, there's another tool that becomes visible on the quick access toolbar called Close Hidden Windows. And this is just going to quickly close everything that's not active. And now we're down to just 3 views. So it closed 4 or 5 views in one step for me. All right, that's quite a long demonstration on the basic interface elements. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll take another look at working with the Revit basic options and start creating a project.